Two children clung to a woman's skirt, their bare feet powdered in dirt. She was being tugged forward by two men with rough hands, her body bent, her hair disheveled. She was not fighting, she had no fight left in her, but the children had their arms locked around her waist, sobbing words that split the day. "Please don't take our mama, we'll work forever." The rancher did not move at first. The plea struck him still, as though someone had driven a stake through the earth at his boots. He watched the boy's small fingers clutch, the girl's face upturned and streaked with dust and tears, and the woman, her face swollen at the cheek, eyes hollow, body trembling under the pull of the men who treated her as a piece of rope to be hauled. One of the men drew back a whip, not for her but for the children. That was when he moved. His boot hit the dirt with a sound like a shot, and he crossed the distance in 3 heavy steps, his shadow falling long over them. The whip never landed. His hand caught the man's collar, jerking him back so hard the whip tumbled to the ground. His other hand brushed the weight of his colt, enough to make the second man stiffen and hesitate. He said nothing. Words would have spoiled the stillness. His silence was heavier than thunder. The first man swung at him, and the rancher answered with a fist that sent the man sprawling against the corral rails. Dust puffed up where he hit, a groan swallowed in the murmur of the crowd that had gathered but done nothing. The second man spat a curse, reaching for a knife at his belt, but froze when the rancher leveled his Colt chest-high. Time held its breath. The woman stared wide-eyed, the children clinging to her legs. For a moment, all that lived was the rasp of the rancher's breathing and the distant buzz of flies around the trough. The men backed off with muttered threats, shame burning in their faces as they stumbled away. The crowd, having seen what it came for, scattered like crows, leaving only silence behind. The woman swayed as though she might fall, and the children clung tighter. The rancher looked down at them, the Colt still heavy in his hand, the plea echoing in his ears. He holstered the gun, touched the brim of his hat, and without a word reached for the horse's reins. He bent, scooped the twins up one by one onto the saddle, and gestured to the woman. She hesitated, lips parting as if to speak, but her voice never found its way out. She followed. The ride out of town was silent, broken only by the rhythm of hooves and the cough of dust. The children clung to the saddle horn, eyes wide, while their mother walked beside the horse, her hand resting against its flank for balance. He said nothing and she asked nothing. The sun dropped lower, setting fire to the horizon, painting the dust in gold. By the time the ranch came into view, the land had gone quiet except for the windmill creaking in the dusk. It was a modest place, weathered boards, a small porch, fences patched and repatched by one man's hand. The smell of hay drifted from the barn, and a dog barked once before retreating to silence. He dismounted, lifted the children down, and opened the door. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and loneliness, the air cool against the heat of the day. He lit the lantern, its glow soft against the walls worn smooth by years of solitude. Without a word, he set beans and bread on the table, poured water into tin cups. The children ate as though starved, crumbs clinging to their lips. The woman did not touch the food until they were satisfied. He noticed. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. Later, when the children slept on a quilt by the fire, their small breaths even at last, he brought a basin of water and a cloth. He held it out. She stared at it, then at him, uncertain. He did not press. When she reached for it, her hands trembled, and he saw the faint bruises along her arm. Without asking, he dipped the cloth, wrung it out, and pressed it gently to her cheek. She flinched but did not pull away. His hands were calloused, rough from reins and rope, yet careful, as though he feared she might shatter beneath his touch. The lantern's flame flickered, casting her face in gold and shadow. She lowered her eyes, saying nothing, and for the first time in years she let someone tend her without demand. The cabin was small, with too few chairs, too few plates. She noticed how everything was meant for one, not for many. The place felt carved out of loneliness, yet steady as stone. She sat in the chair while he leaned against the wall, hat in his hands, watching the fire. He did not sleep until her breathing grew slow and deep. Morning came clear and cool. She rose before him, gathering water, sweeping the porch as if she had always lived there. He watched from the doorway, his coffee steaming in his hand. Her movements were steady, but her body bore the weight of exhaustion. She carried herself with dignity, but every step spoke of years endured. When their eyes met, she looked away, as though afraid of what he might see. At breakfast, she spoke in fragments. Her husband was gone, killed in a card game, debts left behind. His kin had claimed her as theirs to take, twisting law and debt until she was little more than property. The children's plea had not been the first, only the loudest. Her words broke off often, silence filling what could not be spoken. Later that day, a rider passed through. A Mexican drifter, older, skin brown like leather, eyes sharp beneath his hat. He stopped for water, glanced at the woman and children, and muttered a warning. The men from town would not let this lie. They were gathering, drunk on cruelty and emboldened by each other. The rancher listened, gave a curt nod, and the man rode on. The air felt heavier after his dust had settled. That night, the ranch became a fortress. The rancher oiled his rifle, set rounds on the table. The woman hid the children under quilts, whispering instructions to stay still, stay silent. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady for them. She stitched one of his shirts while he worked, her needle moving through cloth by habit, each stitch a thread binding her to this place. They did not speak of it, but the act was understood. Outside, coyotes howled. The wind carried dust across the yard, rattling the shutters. The ranch sat like an island against a dark sea. The storm came with them. A line of torches in the distance, the sound of horses, voices mocking and jeering. The rancher stood on the porch, rifle cradled, lantern light behind him throwing his shadow long across the yard. The woman pulled the twins beneath the floorboards, her arms around them as dust and smoke filtered down through the cracks. The men shouted her name, cursed the rancher, promised fire and worse. Then the first shot cracked, splintering wood from the post beside him. He did not move. He returned fire, steady, deliberate, each shot a measured answer to their rage. Bullets tore through the night. Smoke filled the cabin. The children buried their faces against their mother's chest, their small bodies trembling. She held them tight, whispering prayers she had long forgotten. Above them, the rancher fought, his sleeve torn by a bullet, blood soaking into fabric. He did not falter. His body was a wall between them and the world. Then came betrayal. Among the men, greed broke their unity. Shouts rose, curses flung as one turned on another, striking out in drunken fury. The chaos split them, gave the rancher the sliver he needed. He charged from the porch, knocking one down, rifle swinging like a club. Lightning flashed, throwing the yard into stark white light. In that instant, one of the men raised a gun behind him. The woman, desperate, seized his spare revolver from the table. Her hand shook, but she fired. The sound rang like a church bell. The man fell, his gun tumbling into the dirt. She froze, the smoke curling from the barrel, the twins staring wide-eyed at her. For a heartbeat, she did not breathe. Together, though no words were spoken, they stood side by side. The last of the men scattered into the storm, torches dropping, their courage drowned in thunder and dust. The yard was littered with shadows of bodies, the air thick with smoke and rain beginning to fall. Silence returned, broken only by the ragged breathing of the living. The storm eased toward dawn. The ranch stood scarred but standing. The woman emerged with the twins, their small hands clutching her dress, eyes still wide with fear. The rancher leaned against the porch post, his arm bleeding, his face drawn but unbowed. Their eyes met, and in that glance lived something unspoken, recognition, belonging, the fragile seed of trust. He lowered his gaze, pressed a hand to his wound, and let the silence stretch. The children crawled onto the porch, curling against their mother. She sat beside them, reaching for the cloth to tend the rancher's wound. Her hand was steady now, no longer flinching. He let her touch him, her fingers light, her eyes focused. For the first time, she did not seem afraid. The sky lightened, pale against the ridge, and the smell of smoke lingered like memory. The ranch was not safe. The men would return. The law would not help. But for that moment, in the soft breath before sunrise, they were together. The twins leaned against him as though he had always been theirs, and her hand rested on his arm as though it had always belonged there. The storm had passed, but its shadow remained. The rancher looked to the horizon, the sun breaking through dust, and knew this was only the beginning. And then, from the distance, a rider appeared on the ridge, silhouetted against the pale light. He was not alone. The rancher straightened, rifle heavy in his hand, the woman's breath catching at his side, the twins clutching tighter. The dust rose again.